Hey guys, it's Hina here at Rebalance Physical Therapy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and in Narberth, Pennsylvania on the main line. Today I want to kind of reach out to all of you who might be experiencing headaches with your runs or after running or even after playing intense sports. Now, personally, I started training like 2 years ago for a Ragnar relay, and I was experiencing pretty significant headaches after I ran, and it would take somewhere between, a day to a day and a half if I didn't take anything such as like Advil or ibuprofen or something like that. And that was annoying, obviously, and it can be, debilitating too for some people if it's a severe headache. So I'm going to kind of talk about the 4 common reasons why you might be experiencing that, and then tell you along the way, what actually ended up happening for me and what helped. So one of the, the first things that most people will tell you is hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. So number 1 will be dehydration, okay, is number 1 on the list. Obviously, your body needs lots of water. When you're running, you're sweating, all of the water in your body is basically releasing, and you need to replenish that water or make sure you have water to replenish in your system. So obviously, you need to drink a lot of water, before you go out for your runs. Now, another misunderstanding for people for hydrating is sometimes they'll say, oh, let me drink a sports drink or something like Gatorade or Powerade or something like that before I go for my run. And I'm not going to get into it today too much, but Elayne is actually going to be talking about that in the next few videos, about why actually drinking sports drinks either before and after you run might not be the best thing for you. So the main thing we want to stick to, hydration, is water. Okay, that's going to be your best source. Drink plenty of it throughout the day, and you'll be okay. Now, number 2 on that list is not having enough, like your blood sugar isn't being balanced correctly. So you want to make sure, as far as, eating, that your blood sugar levels are staying balanced. So if you go out on a run or you go and play sports and you haven't had an adequate amount of food to kind of balance those blood sugars in your body, then you might get this decrease in blood sugar, and that can lead to dizziness, it can lead to headaches, all sorts of other things. But what is the best thing to eat? And again, hopefully in the next future talks that we have, we'll kind of be talking about some of the good foods that you should eat before you run or exercise or things like that. But the main thing is you don't want to just eat a lot of simple carbs. You want to have some complex carbohydrates as part of before you run. So, handful, make sure it has some type of protein in it. So if you can't have something like a sit-down meal, maybe an hour before you run, then make sure you have like a handful of nuts or something like that, or something with some type of healthy protein that has a low glycemic index. So if you're gonna have, a fruit before you run or something like that, pair it with something like a handful of nuts or peanut butter or almond butter or something like that, because that is going to help stabilize your blood sugars before you run. Number 3 is an electrolyte deficiency. Now, this is where, so electrolytes, right? This is where most people think, I'm going to have a sports drink. I'm going to have Gatorade, I'm going to have Powerade, or any of these other drinks that are out there right now. And I'll tell you, many people, it's misconceiving to think that you're going to need that after your run, or even during your run. If you're filling up your canisters and you have water in them or power drinks, you may not need that unless you're going for a really, really long run. So maybe like, 10 to 14 miles or something like that. And again, Elayne's going to kind of talk about that in the next video. But for me, this is where my deficiency was coming in. And even though I would drink Gatorade, I would drink water, I would try and eat something, nothing would actually change my headaches. But what did change my headaches, was actually drinking chicken broth after I ran. I remember running about, 5 miles during one part of the Ragnar relay that I was running, and I just got an intense headache. Nothing was taking it away, not even the physical therapy that I was doing to myself, and there just happened to be some chicken broth that they were giving out, and it sounded good at the time. Drank it, immediately my headache went away. So I kind of, started researching into that. Why is that? And it actually was salt. I probably was losing more salt than my body, my body needed salt, and I was losing most of it through my run. Even though I wasn't running 14 miles, I was only running like maybe 4 or 5, but that was enough for that to deplete my salt and sodium and maybe change that electrolyte balance in my body. So instead of reaching for a Powerade, or maybe if you do and it doesn't feel like it's changing anything, then maybe think about taking in something salty. I know some people will have salt tabs on hand that sometimes can help. But something as simple as just drinking chicken broth after your run, or even a handful of pretzels, even though it's got white sugar in it, which we'll talk about later, that might actually do the trick. But number one, I would say chicken broth is probably, or some type of broth with salt in it. If you're a vegetarian, maybe vegetarian broth. Okay, and then number four is it could be postural changes. Okay, and by that, I mean, when you run, okay, you're using your whole entire body. If you know that your form might be off, or you've been to a physical therapist or you're having neck pain or things like that, then you know that you might be using muscles that might be imbalanced a little bit. So I wanted to kind of show you, now this is going to look like a complex picture, but I wanted to show you a picture of all the neck muscles that attach up from your spine into your head. There's a lot of them. There's superficial muscles that lay right underneath your skin, and then there's deeper muscles that go a couple of inches deep and they hook onto your spine. If you have postural changes, alignment changes, if your form isn't right, then you might be overutilizing these muscles. They might be becoming tense, and you might develop spasms in these muscles called trigger points. And when those trigger points become active and painful, they can set off a headache. So you might experience one headache that looks like this. Now the X here represents trigger points or muscle spasms that you can have. And if you press on those points, or if you kind of reach back there and you're like, oh man, that feels really intense, and it triggers your headache, then it could be that these muscles are imbalanced. They're not working correctly, and you might be overutilizing them incorrectly during your run, which triggers off a headache. So it could be postural in nature too. So those are the four things. Make sure you drink plenty of water before you go out for your runs or before any sports event. Make sure you're eating a pretty good meal that has a low glycemic index, that gives you that long-term energy level before about an hour before you go out for your run or your sports event. Make sure maybe after you run and you're experiencing a headache, then grab something that has salt in it, because that might actually help alleviate those headaches. And again, any type of postural imbalances that you might be having, then you want to have those addressed. Now, we'll have plenty of videos later on of how you might be able to self-release some of those muscles, but in the interim, obviously if you're in this area, you can come see us anytime, and we can kind of help you figure out why that might be happening from a postural standpoint. Or if you happen to have a physical therapist in your area that you trust, you can go and get that checked out, and hopefully they can help you from that standpoint. Again, lots of good information on our website, so you can go to www.rebalancept.com. That's REBALANCEPT.com. And I hope this video was helpful to any of you who are experiencing headaches during your runs or your sports events. Take care.